A decade may not seem like a long period to adults. It may seem like it goes by quickly. But my daughter, who attended elementary school, is now old enough to be an adult in the workforce. After leaving us voluntarily 10 years ago, my husband Paul has been living at his parents' home, neglecting his paternal responsibilities. The same goes for my mother-in-law, who approved of this. They probably wouldn't want anything from me except for me to be their housekeeper, even if I were to suggest that we move into a house together and all of our generations lived together. Now it's too late. I have raised my child alone for 10 years, even if they become nice when they smell money. I haven't wasted time like you have. My name is Sandra, and I work part-time and am a full-time housewife. I am 53 years old. Hannah, my only child, will begin working next year after receiving a job offer. Hannah commutes from home to university. She is still unaware of the outside world, which worries me about her. However, I'm glad she's grown up nicely. Parenting seemed to pass fairly quickly, but I still need to pay back her student loan. I have put my kid first for more than 20 years, but I'm not sure what my life will be like moving forward. Traveling, engaging in hobbies, or joining the gym, I've always wanted to try may be pleasant. However, my parents both passed away about this same period. They both died instantly from a rare ENT collision, which precipitated their abrupt demise. I was too preoccupied with funeral arrangements and inheritance issues to have time to grieve because it happened so suddenly. I finally started crying after the tax accountant's meeting and felt like everything had settled down. It dawned on me then that I should tell my spouse. I got on the phone and gave him a call. There was no reply. He wouldn't respond, of course. I was aware that I had made multiple attempts before to the burial, but he did not reply. I sent mails, but I never heard back. I tried a few times, then got distracted and forgot about him. It was now more than a week later. I don't think it makes me inhumane to ignore my husband in this situation. Actually, my husband hasn't returned home in years. He's not missing. He's just moved in with his folks. He has avoided me ever since he left the house on his own will. Not being able to contact someone in an emergency can occasionally be bothersome and irritating. My only option is to use his parents' home phone to leave a message. When my husband first left, I didn't understand. He wouldn't talk to me about it, so I'm not really sure why he left, but I don't really care. After taking care of the kids and starting a full-time work, I thought it was useless to try to understand someone who would abandon his family for no apparent reason. He had put his own family ahead of us from the start of our marriage. We had numerous arguments about this. He would always betray his word any time his mother asked him for a favor, no matter how many times I reminded him that we had our own family to protect. Whether we'd planned a trip or just been ready to head out didn't matter. Even so, I thought he made an effort to support the family when our daughter was a little child. However, our daughter's mother abruptly wounded her back when she entered adolescence, and her behavior toward her father became more distant. There was a lot of snow that year, and both my daughter and I were sick with colds. It was a trying time for his mother, so he stated he would help out at his parents' place for a bit, but he never returned. I'm not sure how a guy who was completely incapable of handling housework was useful. However, my mother-in-law took care of him and allowed him to stay as long as he pleased. Her adult son was being spoiled by her overbearing and meddling mother-in-law. My spouse was unable to leave the comforts of his parents' house as a result. I was the evil daughter-in-law who had taken her beautiful boy, according to my mother-in-law. Their actions were genuinely irrational and intolerable. I called the home of my husband's parents since I was out of options, but it was my mother-in-law who answered the phone. "Good day, Mom. Sandra is here. Paul, is he present? I'm unable to contact him. What's wrong? I must talk to him. Would you kindly put him on the line? What is it that you need to discuss with him? I'll inform him." This was the standard conversation. I haven't spoken to my husband directly in years as a result of this. My parents actually passed away. We only invited close family and friends to the funeral because of the current circumstances. Why didn't you tell me such an important thing immediately? I tried several times. This is unbelievable. How on earth could you be that stupid? I didn't know what she was discussing. By common sense, what does she mean specifically? Outrageous. Why did you wait until after the funeral to tell me? For that reason, what are you going to do with your parents' house, by the way? This weekend, our family is coming together to make some decisions. After a brief pause, my mother-in-law added, the huge house. Yes, given the size of the house, it can take some time. I see. My mother-in-law gave me a menacing laugh. Do you have something to say? No, not at all. It is insignificant. Is that accurate? I'll then pardon myself. Hannah, my daughter, gave me a worried look as we hung up. How are you doing? You appear agitated. You don't have to push yourself to call your parents or grandparents. You work too hard, Mom, my daughter worriedly said. It's not really that easy. Mom, you feel like you have entirely too much responsibilities. My response to my daughter's worry was, I just don't want to be thought of as unreasonable. I was boiling inside with rage. I even considered severing my relationship with them since it might be best. Nevertheless, he remains my daughter's only father. Cutting the connection with them wasn't that simple. When the weekend finally came, my daughter and I visited my parents. My siblings cleaned up, and everyone did their part, moving forward step by step. It was more difficult than I had anticipated to clean out a house where no one had resided. We made the decision to let a professional service handle the larger furnishings and appliances. My mother-in-law called me out of the blue. She rarely got in touch with me. How is the cleanup progressing, Sandra? Is everything in order? With a cheery demeanor, my mother-in-law inquired, seemingly bearing good news. To be honest, I'm now preoccupied with an urgent matter and won't be able to attend today. I apologize for it. In any case, I didn't anticipate her coming over to assist. Why would she say such a thing at this point when we haven't really seen each other since my husband left? She may not even be aware of where my family's house is. It's all right. Kindly let it go without worrying. Avoid becoming timid. Helping one another out is only natural because we are family. Is this a peculiar turn of events? Usually conceited, my mother-in-law appeared to have some empathy for the circumstance. I chose to truly acknowledge her emotions. By the way, when you said you're tidying up the house, you mean sorting through belongings, right? Yes, there are so many things, and it's quite a hassle. It must be difficult to be surrounded by so many things. Yes, particularly with clothing and artwork. When there are things we don't know what to deal with, it can be quite difficult. I see. That seems really nice. I got a peek of my mother-in-law's genuine intents and felt numb. I was naive to believe she was actually worried. How could she have worried that she wouldn't be able to assist? Was it all you wanted to talk about? To be honest, I was actually interested in learning how much of you your parents left behind. What? Well, since it's my turn next, it is. Just for reference, I just wanted to know. That varies from one family to another. Well, yes, but it wouldn't hurt to tell me a little, would it? I was unable to control my annoyance. In the 10 years since our last meeting, did my mother-in-law age and become even more bold and avaricious. In their will, my parents stipulated that the inheritance would be split equally amongst the 3 of us siblings. Obviously, my mother-in-law has no business getting involved. Let's make this clear. The inheritance will be divided into 3, so it has nothing to do with you, Mother. What? I'm busy right now, so I'll excuse myself. With that, I ended the call. Her attitude was extremely rude. My parents had passed away, and she didn't offer condolences, only inquired about the inheritance. Then my daughter, who had been tidying up another room, came over. Was that Grandma on the phone? Yes, it was. What happened? Nothing for you to worry about, I replied with a forced smile. My daughter looked slightly displeased. I'm an adult now, you know. Stop treating me like a child. I hadn't meant it that way, but her assertive response surprised me a bit. Indeed, she is now of an age to be treated as a full-fledged adult. I felt a mix of happiness and an indescribable sense of loneliness. "Mom, I know what's going on." "What do you mean?" "If my guess is right, I want you to make one promise." "A promise? What kind?" That's when I made a special promise with my daughter. A week passed. The house cleanup was nearly finished, and I was thinking of returning to work when the doorbell rang. Thinking it was the delivery guy, I opened the door. To an annoying sight. "Long time no see." Oh, I should have checked first. If I had known, I wouldn't have opened the door. There stood my mother-in-law, and next to her was a loose, unshapely figure with thin hair fluttering in the breeze. Was this middle-aged man wearing a stretched-out sweatshirt and looking filthy really my spouse, Paul? I stared in disbelief at first and said, "You've got the wrong address." As I was about to close the door, my mother-in-law said, "Don't joke around, Sandra." Breaking the silence and visiting without any prior announcement, what did these two want? And most of all, why was my mother-in-law in such high spirits, despite never allowing any space between her and her beloved son? My mother-in-law breezed past me and entered the room with confidence. Wait, mother. My husband followed her in, entering my property without asking. Maybe he didn't need permission since it was his home too, but the 10-year gap had practically made him a stranger to me, and I certainly didn't want to welcome this unsightly man into my home. "I have a surprise for you, Sandra. I thought you'd be pleased," my mother-in-law cheerily said. My husband sat down next to my mother-in-law. "Oh, I'd like some coffee, please, Paul. How about you?" "I'll have tea, Sandra. Please bring us some." I couldn't stand not just my mother-in-law's behavior, but my husband's as well. How can a man who left home without a word, spent 10 years at his parents' house, sending only a small amount for living expenses, and never contacting us, now demand things as if nothing happened? Why should I serve you? Even if I were to oblige, there are things that should be said first. Although I was screaming in my mind, I maintained my composure and asked, "What's the occasion?" "What's wrong, Sandra? Please make it quick. This is how you treat us after we've come all this way? If you have no business here, please leave." What a rude daughter-in-law. I see no reason why I should show manners to someone who appears out of nowhere after 10 years following their own whims. I decided to remain calm. At that moment, my daughter came down from the second floor. "Hannah, it's been so long, Grandma." My daughter's eyes widened in surprise. Even my husband seemed taken aback by her reaction. "Hannah, you've grown so much." Who are you?" It seemed she didn't recognize the man next to her grandmother as her father. Understandably so, since the last time they saw each other was when she was in elementary school. "What do you mean?" "It's me, Dad." "Wait, Dad? Oh, Hannah, I can understand it's hard to accept that this slightly overweight, balding, middle-aged man is your father. To you, he's nothing but a stranger. Hannah, sit down here," her father instructed, pointing to the seat next to him. My daughter stepped back, visibly uncomfortable. "No, absolutely not." "Why not?" "I have a unique condition that makes me ill if I don't stand." "Don't worry about it." I felt sorry for my daughter to suddenly have such a health issue. "Take a look at this," my mother-in-law suggested. She pulled out architectural plans from an envelope she brought, featuring the logo of a renowned architectural firm. The floor plan showed enough rooms for 4 families to live comfortably, a rooftop garden plan, and sketches of a palace-like exterior. A catalog for luxury cars was subtly included as well. "How do you like it?" "What is this?" "We plan our home. Isn't it wonderful?" My mother-in-law sought agreement, but I was wondering how I should respond. "The kitchen and utilities can be chosen as you like, Sandra." "What do you mean?" "No need to be shy. It's your right to decide since you'll be the one using it." "Using it? What do you mean?" "I recently realized we should live together as a family, And since we just happen to get some money on our hands, what timing? Don't you agree? That is. I don't know the specifics, but how does that involve me? We're family, aren't we? I believe family possessions should be shared. I couldn't grasp the details, but it was clear to me that my mother-in-law was going out of control. Desperate to turn the situation around, I turned to my husband. What do you think? However, in response to my question, they just exchanged looks and nodded silently. Then my mother-in-law whispered something to my husband, so I couldn't hear. It was as if a secret meeting was taking place. My husband finally spoke up. Seems like it's time for me to return home. Confused, I let out an unintelligible noise. What with the $3 million we inherited, I'm thinking of building a two-family house to live there with my parents. My mother-in-law nodded smugly. Isn't that a great plan? Hearing this, my daughter couldn't hold back and exclaimed, "Did you hear that, Mom?" It's just like I said. I couldn't help but laugh. "Haha, I can't believe it really turned out just as you said." "Ahaha, Hannah, you're amazing." We shared a laugh, and the atmosphere lightened. Seeing this, my mother-in-law and husband also seemed pleased. "I'm glad you two agree. True, the construction date is already set, and all that's left is to pay the down payment," I said. My daughter confronted the two, who seemed to be misunderstanding. "You're completely wrong, Grandma." "Dad, don't you think you're being a bit too oblivious?" "Huh? Even if you say you want to live together, I absolutely refuse to take care of the two of you who have troubled Mom for years." Surprised, my mother-in-law exclaimed, "What?" "Mom, I won the bet, so keep your promise." My daughter said energetically, "All right, all right." I responded, hearing our conversation. My mother-in-law asked, "What do you mean? What promise?" "It seems like you can't tell the difference between what belongs to others and what belongs to you. So we bet on whether or not Grandma was after the inheritance." My daughter explained. "Huh? What does that mean? If you could tell the difference, you would have long told Dad to go back to his own home. But you yourself said that families should be together. I wonder whether you know what place was the right place to live, yours or ours." It was my husband who raised his voice next. "The truth is, I left this house because of you two." My daughter and I looked at each other. We couldn't understand what he was saying. "I would have forgiven you immediately if you had just apologized. I was waiting for just one word from you both." "Wait, you lost me." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You told me to leave." "I simply couldn't recall," he said. "There's no way I have no memory of telling my husband to leave. Have you really forgotten that cold, snowy night when I came home tired from work? You told me to leave the house that night when it was snowing." Trying to remember, a faint memory came back. That day, despite Hannah and me being bedridden with a cold, he came home without buying anything and asked, "What's for dinner?" So I just asked him to dine out. To hold on to such a trivial thing for years, he said, felt like all the strength drained out of me. How stupid was that? Really, what happened? Yes, that's why I'm confused. Even so, why did you leave it like that? It's your fault. I tried to contact you many times, you and your mother as well. My mother-in-law smirked with a hint of guilt for not relaying the messages. "Apologize and I'll forgive everything." "Wait, I should apologize. Let's forget about the past and start anew. Let's reconcile as a family," he said. Hearing this, my daughter couldn't contain her laughter. "Dad, didn't you know? Mom has been preparing for divorce for 5 years. "What?" The promise was with my daughter, to get divorced if my mother-in-law was acting out of grief for the inheritance. It was a sign of endless troubles ahead, prompting me to make my own decision, including her wish for me to carve out my own future. Having her support, I truly felt relieved. It was like shedding a heavy burden off my shoulders that I've been carrying for years. "Don't joke around. Do you think you can just submit a divorce application unilaterally?" Carly retorted to my husband's anger. "Long-term no contact and separation are sufficient grounds for divorce." "What does that mean?" Didn't you know? I thought I was fulfilling my duties as a father by sending money. In reality, the amount was way too insignificant. Do you think children can be raised on money alone? How can you say you fulfilled your role as a father after neglecting your family for 10 years? A mother is supposed to take care of the kids. There was no point in talking to such a person. No need to try and understand each other. Yes, I raised her by myself, and indeed we didn't need you. Where were you for school events, pickups, preparing lunchboxes? Looking back, it was indeed challenging. Even when I was sick, the husband I should have been able to rely on was absent. Your presence was and will be unnecessary. What? Let's send this. I'll submit the divorce papers. Wait, are you serious? What are you planning to do from now on? Sandra, please help. What should Paul and I do when we get older? My mother-in-law pleaded, trembling with fear. You're essentially saying, Hannah, and I should be your helpers or living staff. No, that's not what I don't know what to tell you unless I have something I'm indebted to you for. What about the $3 million inheritance? Let's use it more effectively. Where did these $3 million come from? If divided among siblings, it implies there was a $9 million inheritance. There couldn't possibly be such a large sum. Indeed, my family home looked impressive, but it was old and of no special value. Most of the wealth was spent by my financially careless parents. $3 million? $3 million. Could it be a misunderstanding of dividing into three? What? There wasn't such a large sum of inheritance in the first place. What? Even if there were, I would never build a house for us to live together. I declare this firmly in front of my bewildered mother-in-law and tearful husband. Sandra, are you really going to leave me behind? Despite the middle-aged man's tears pleading for forgiveness, my decision remained unchanged. Continue living at your beloved parents' home as you wish. Goodbye. It has been 3 months since then. My ex-spouse's constant requests for a reconciliation were almost stalker-like. Over 20 times a day, long mails with complaints were received. They were obviously not raid. I made a suggestion that I would file a lawsuit if he continued to act in an invasive manner. He backed down after he realized that I had preserved the threatening emails as proof in case I needed them later. When the divorce paperwork were ultimately completed, the processing went smoothly. My mother-in-law and ex-husband were not very creative when you came to think about it. They gave in to instant gratification and self-centered lifestyle, which eventually brought them sorrow because they were unable to connect with others and were only concerned with their own destiny. It was naive to think that someone else should look after them. Considering that even my kid is trying to become independent, it's a sad sight. Speaking of which, my daughter intends to move out and live alone after acquiring a job. That was my recommendation. It will be a terrific opportunity for her to learn the value of money, time, and family, even though I'll be alone. Family needs real-world experience. It's not like she'll be left to fend for herself, what with living close by. I want her to become a responsible adult, and am always here to support her. Regarding myself, I was working part-time at the company, and I was offered a full-time position. They highly suggested it, once the effort of raising a child somehow concluded. I'm incredibly appreciative of the chance to work for a company full-time. After the divorce, I'm hard at work studying for a certificate right now. I'm looking forward to this new adventure. Upon telling my daughter the news, she remarked, "Mom, you're like a new employee, just like me." Together, we laughed. Everyone has the same amount of time, but we all spend those 10 years in different ways. Both happy times and instances when things don't go as expected will occur. Perhaps some conclusions will be drawn in 10 more years. I intend to live an independent life as my daughter requested. I'm hoping you follow suit.